Well, hey there, YouTube. It is I, Ember Honey Raven, the big fat witch. How are you? And you, how are you doing? How are you doing? And hey, baby doll, how are you? You doing okay? It's Friday. We're grateful for that, if nothing else, right? Y'all, I'm glad it's Friday because it has been a long week. I'm ready to just keep it real casual today, and yeah, so we're going to do another episode of Wedin, witching every day in November. And y'all, sometimes witching out really is just going back and, you know, evaluating your history or doing some shadow work, or it's very basic things. Sometimes it's cleaning your house, you know, making some like witchy goodness in your kitchen, like, you know, a special bread or a dessert, or maybe it's working in your garden. Sometimes it's just going out and walking around and getting some fresh air. And let me tell you, I may be doing all those things today because I woke up, y'all, I felt rough this morning. My body hurt. Like, it's kind of cold here in Atlanta, and I've been doing a lot of physical activity this week because, you know, I'm trying to get this extra weight I have gained back off. Because y'all know I got down real thin there about, it's been about 4 years ago. I was at my lowest weight. I crept back up a little bit because, you know, going through a really nasty divorce and going through things will do that to you. But we're working on it. We're going back down. So I wanted to talk today about, I don't even know how to describe this or title this, but I basically want to talk about who I was before I was a witch. I want to talk about the roots of like how I came into the craft. I have other videos up on my channel about, you know, how I knew, things I've studied, how I came with my name. And by the way, I figured out the other day, I still have a large amount of my very old videos privated. I need to go back and unprivate those. I will be working on that over the next couple of weeks. There are some things that I need to edit a few of them. I just want to make sure that I don't have, you know, anything in them like from a, you know, I'm just gonna be straight. I don't want my ex-wife in none of my videos. I think she appeared in like 1 or 2 of my videos. So I want to make sure that I go back and just erase that, if only. Anyway, so I want to talk about the fact that I grew up in a Christian church and talk about like what that was for me and how that kind of led to me being on the path I am now, which is a practicing witch. So I attended church for the first time, I think when I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6. The family I grew up in, like my grandmother always attended church, but it was one of those things where she would go and my papa would stay home, but on both sides, because, you know, 2 sets of grannies and grandpas. I had a couple of aunts and uncles that would attend church, but like it wasn't like a thing. Like, we were Christian, like we grew up talking about God and Jesus and all that, but it wasn't like, you know, that wasn't something that my mom really was like, yeah, this is what you're doing. So my mom and dad got divorced when I was very, very young. My mom remarried my brother's dad, who was a wonderful man. He was my first stepfather, and he was actually a super wonderful man. He wasn't really about church either, but I want to say that I did attend a couple of services here and there. It may have been with him. I don't even remember. So my mom divorced him and then married my second stepfather, and I'm not going to use his name or be very specific about him, but his family, y'all, they were some church-going mofos. Like, they were in church every time the doors were open. And this was in a very small town in Arkansas. The entire family pretty much lived on the same piece of land. So if y'all ever seen The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia on Netflix, like, take that family, put them in Arkansas, and give them a few more teeth, and that's like the extended step family that I grew up in. Large family, lots of cousins, lots of aunts and uncles, extended family. They all lived within just a few square miles of each other. So insert incest joke here. But they were very church-going folks. There was and I'm going to be not specific here as well, they went to a very The church that they went to was a Christian church, but it was a very specific brand of Christianity where it was a very lively church. They believed in speaking in tongues. There were a lot of elements in that church that would be enough to scare the living hell out of any small child. I'm talking about old men jumping over pews. I'm talking about people taking up the Spirit, speaking in tongues, all that. So when my mother married this guy, they used church as a babysitter. And on Sunday mornings, they would send me, my brother, and my stepsister. They would just send us to church and they would stay home. And the church was close enough to the house that we could walk to it. So, and that was the expectation. It wasn't an option for me, like, not to go to church. Like, they made us. The church was full of, my extended cousins and family members, and there were a lot of, like, older people there that had been going to that church. It was like a legacy church, so families would go, and then their children would go, and then their children's children would go, so it was just one of those. I felt very much like an outsider because I wasn't, like, real family, but I'm trying to say this delicately. I learned about the Bible there. I went to revivals. I went to church on Wednesday nights for Bible study. I studied the Bible extensively. I have read the Bible cover to cover several times in my life. I can quote scripture. I can talk about, different aspects of the Bible. I have actually not just read the Bible, but I have studied the history of the Bible, all of it. But as a child in that particular church, I can tell you that that particular brand of Christianity for me was also very hellfire and brimstone. It was very fear-based. It was very much based on, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're not going to get into heaven. If you don't get saved, if you don't get sanctified, if you don't get baptized, if you don't join the church, it was just very fear-based. So I did all those things. I was saved. I was, I would routinely witness to other kids, and I fervently believed in God. I actually at one point wondered if there was a way for me to become a nun. I just really thought, what, I would totally devote my life to that version of God. Now, I will also say that, I'm going to be careful here again. I will also say that during that time in my life, from the time I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I was going through some severe physical and sexual abuse in my home. Lots and lots of trauma. And church, going to church and having this childlike devotion to God or Jesus was really kind of my saving grace at that point. It was really the place that I felt safest in the world because I felt like if something was wrong, I could pray or, there was just a lot. I would routinely go to the altar during church services and pray. I would routinely, just join in the services the way you would think any fervent believer in God would. When I was about 8 or 9, I started experiencing some very traumatic events. I'm not going to be specific in the extended family, and I felt very, very untethered. I felt very lonely. My dad, my biological father, at that point was not coming to pick me up for visitations. Like I would go months without seeing him, and I felt very alone, and I felt very unprotected because I was, and I felt very scared all the time, and I felt very angry all the time because when you're a child and someone is touching you inappropriately or someone's beating the hell out of you for no reason other than they are a bully, you may tend to, as a child, look at that and be like, well, I must be a terrible person if they want to do these things to me. But eventually that turns into rage, and you're like, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve any of this. So I basically started turning all of my energy toward God because I thought God will save me from all of this. I prayed. I would make weird little offerings. Like I would go out into the horse pasture because we had horses. They were raggedy ponies, y'all. They were not show ponies. Like they were just like farm horses. If you've ever grown up on a mini farm, you know. We had cows. There were ducks. You know, goats. I mean, there were rabbits. We had all kinds of animals. You know, I would make weird little offers. I would write prayers and like tear them up in pieces of paper and let them fly into the wind. So I would not say that I was practicing witchcraft, but I absolutely was taking an alternative path to talk to God. I desperately wanted him to hear me, or the version of God that I thought, you know, was there. I desperately wanted him to hear me so that we could have a conversation about what was happening in my life, because I wanted him to save me from that. You know, as a kid, I didn't really know. I didn't know any better. I just knew what I had been taught in the church. I really started kind of questioning God during that time in my life between the ages of 9 and 10, because things were really escalating for me. And again, I'm being very careful because I don't want YouTube to pull this video down, but just use your imagination. Things were getting really bad at home for me, and I felt very unsafe, and I started questioning why God would let things like that happen to me. If I was a kid and had never really done anything wrong, I mean, I was a straight A student, y'all. But I started questioning, like, I'm fervently devoted to God. I'm going to church all the time. I'm praying every day, all day, multiple times a day. I'm, you know, taking the money that I've earned from mowing yards and giving it to the church. Like, I felt like I was doing everything that I should do to get God's attention, because again, I'm a child and I just don't know. But something changed for me because I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And y'all, I really thought that God would talk to me in the way that the church said God would talk to you. And I prayed, and I just he never answered. And my rage was really, really building at that time, as far as, this is unfair. This is so just not the way I'm going to live. And then there was an incident where I broke something in my home, and I'm just going to save you all the details. But I broke something at home while my mom and my stepfather were out somewhere. And I knew that I was going to basically get the hell beat out of me for it. I did it on accident, but my parents, like my mom and my stepdad, they were not the kind of people that you could explain, hey, this really expensive thing, I broke it. It was completely on accident. I just wasn't paying attention and I stepped on it and broke it. They were not the kind of people that I could have explained that to. It was just going to be an automatic beating, and that was it. And I had kind of, I had kind of gotten to the point in my life where I just couldn't take another beating. And when I say beating, I don't mean spankings. I mean beatings. I mean that Child Protective Services was at my home multiple times when I was a child. And I'm not telling you guys all this for sympathy, but I just want to let you know what led me to turn away from that version of religion. So when I stepped on the item and broke it, I immediately dropped to my knees and prayed, please God, just put this thing back together so that I won't be beaten. And in my mind, y'all, again, because I'm 9, in my mind, I was like, if this thing can just be mended, it's like, I won't tell anybody that you've done this for me, God. I will just devote my life to you. I'll become a nun. Like, I will, I'll make sure everybody in the world gets a Bible. You're a kid. You just make all kinds of promises. And of course, I went to bed that night without the item being fixed, and just kind of waiting for the door to slam when my parents got home and discovered it. And I will fast forward past what happened around that because it's traumatic. But that was really when I started questioning, because there were just too many times that I prayed and never got an answer. There were too many times that I prayed and still felt unprotected. There were too many times I prayed and still felt lonely. So when I was 12 years old, I ran away from home. And that was my life is a movie. I'll fast forward through the next several years because it was, I went through a lot during that time in my life. But when I was about 15, I had gone through some more really terrible things. I ended up going to live with my biological father, who was already married to a woman who technically would have been my stepmother, who, y'all, I'll just be honest with you, y'all, she was batshit crazy. She was also violent. She was a hoarder. Just, not a nice person. So insert more trauma and more, just violence and things like that. So when I was 15, my dad finally decided to leave her, and he and I went and lived in a place on our own. I had decided by the time I was 15 that I didn't actually believe in God anymore, that I was just like fine knowing that we were alone, just on our own in the universe. I actually was like, I don't actually think that there's a God the way that these churches are presenting. I don't think that there's like this whole story of Jesus, and some of this feels like BS to me. I almost said B crap. Wouldn't that be funny? Instead of bullshit or bull crap, it's just B crap. And I actually went to my school library. I think I would have been in 10th grade at that time because I was a year ahead. I skipped a grade. And I started looking for books on the Bible, and I didn't want to read people's ideas about what they had read in the Bible. I just wanted to know like the history, like how did they find it? Like who wrote it? Who translated it? And I started studying, the etymology of the Bible and the stories in the Bible. And that is when I started studying the Torah and the Quran. And I started reading up on Buddhism. And the next thing you know, I am checking out 8, 9, and 10 books at a time. And I had to get special permission from the librarian because I was that girl. And coming home with stacks of books and reading all the time. And you guys got to remember, I'm old, so this is before the internet, because if you wanted to study something, you couldn't just go Google nothing, y'all. Like, you had to go to the actual library. You had to thumb through the little card catalog. Like, you had to put in some work. Okay, so you young folks that have the internet, y'all need to be praising the gods of the internet, because believe me, it makes things easier. But suffice it to say, the more I read, the more I studied, the more firmly entrenched I became in the fact that, I was kind of like, wow, I don't actually think that the world was formed the way that the Bible says it was. I don't think that God is actually the one in charge here. And, when I say that I didn't believe in God, it really wasn't about, well, I just think the idea of God is fake. It wasn't that. It was just, I think the idea of God that's been presented in the Bible is not true. So I was really searching for, like, there's got to be something, there's got to be something, or maybe we really are alone in the universe. So I spent a couple of years really questioning. I didn't go to church. I didn't do any of that. I just spent a couple of years reading and living, and, I came out as queer during that time, and it was just really a total evolution of spirit, evolution of self, and it was really all about, I am going to live the way that I think is right. I'm not going to live based on what I've read in a book or based on what other people want from me. I'm just going to do me, which for a person like me was actually, I can look back on that now and say that was actually very brave of me. I wasn't a person who came from any kind of resources. Going to college wasn't an option unless I got a scholarship or paid for it myself. I did not have family that I could fall back on as far as them helping me with money or anything. They weren't the kind of people that could do that. So I studied for several years, and I started kind of bumping into paganism and Wicca just in my studies, and I started kind of untangling some of the things that I had been told about witches and witchcraft in the church. I grew up being told it was all evil, and that we should turn away from that. But the more I bumped into about paganism, especially because it's very earth-based, I was just like, okay, wait, this is something tangible. Like, I can actually go outside and put my feet in the dirt and feel something. I can look up to the sun and feel the wind on my face and feel something. I can I can put my hands in a running river and I can feel something, not just with my hands, but in my body. I could feel something. It didn't occur to me while studying paganism that I could feel something spiritually too. I just knew that there was a buzzing that would happen in my body when I went outside and really tried to convene with the earth. So I eventually started studying, I was very immersed in tarot at that time, and I was, just the occult in general, y'all. I was a goth at the time, and, anything that was really occult, anything that was like, I was big into Marilyn Manson, anything that I felt was just fringe, I just really wanted to know about it because I felt like there was so much fear around it that I was like, I don't want to be afraid of anything. So let me just go study and, dip my toes in that water and see how it feels. And fast forward a couple of years and, I am lighting candles and incense, and I am, speaking things into existence, and I would call it a prayer, but I didn't really know who or what I was praying to. I just knew that it wasn't a Christian God. And I could hear the echoes of those prayers in my head and in my heart and in my soul. And if you know, you know. I just knew that it wasn't this Christian God that I had read about in the Bible or that they had preached about in church. I just knew that there was some other energy that I was actually feeling, and I could feel it. So I studied a lot. I talked to a lot of people. I, just really immersed myself. And I don't know, I had this awareness one day that it wasn't God that I was looking for. It wasn't, this Jesus entity that I was looking for. I was really just looking for Goddess. And I was really looking for the way that my mind and spirit would be opened to that divine feminine. Because for me, in my practice, I am very, very divine feminine focused. I am a daughter of the Morrigan, that I don't even have a patron god. I don't need one. I don't hear a patron god. And this is not, I'm not anti-male or misandric or anything like that. I have wonderful men in my life. It's just when it comes to male energy, I can't feel it. I can't hear it. So I did start developing a relationship with divine feminine goddess. I did not know it was the Morrigan for a while. I did not know it was her. I just knew that it was this fierce, protective, intelligent, loving energy that I'm getting verklempt. This is so stupid. I just knew that energy made me feel all of the things that I had always wanted to feel when I looked for God. And that felt like home to me. That felt like a place I could recognize. That felt like a place I could grow. That felt like a place I could be safe. That felt like a place that I could be me and be completely accepted. And, even if my practice was very solitary, because this is another thing that I will tell you, I am so sorry about that, you guys. UPS came and Bella was on duty and I just had to cut that part out. What I was saying is I've actually, I've been solitary and I've never actually craved practicing with a coven. I've actually never craved sharing my relationship with the Morrigan or with divine feminine spirit with other people. I know that that's valued and I know that it's valid. I'm sure that if I encountered, the right group of people, I would absolutely open circle with them, because I know people that have talked about it and they get a lot out of it. But for me, I feel completely fulfilled just having my relationship on my own. I've always viewed spirituality as intensely personal, and it's not that I'm suggesting that it isn't if you are in a coven, or that, if you open circle with other people. It's just, for me, I like to keep that as a private conversation between myself and the Morrigan, and apparently everybody on YouTube. So I just wanted to basically tell you guys my story as far as where I was, where I started at, and how I ended up as a witch. I have obviously left a large number of details out that are probably pertinent to my story, but for the sake of brevity and for the sake of just some things are just private. That's what I'm willing to share about that. I also want to say that I don't often talk about my childhood or things like that. It's not that my childhood was like terrible. I had some moments of joy in my childhood, but I don't often share those things because I don't want to give you the impression that because my childhood was bad that I turned away from God. It wasn't that for me. That form of God or Jesus and I would have never been a good fit. We just don't speak the same language. And that would have been whether I had the perfect childhood or not. So I just want to be very, very clear. I don't at all feel that I am a witch or focused on the divine feminine because there's something, wrong in my life. I actually feel like I'm a witch because there's something very right in my life. And I hope you feel that way too, if that's, your form of practice. I hope you feel at home and at peace when you think about your own relationship with your God or goddess. Even if you're a Christian witch, if that makes you feel fulfilled, I'm happy for anybody that can find that level of comfort in their religion or their spirituality or their belief system. So this is a very long video. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you more than you know for hearing me. I hope that we can have conversations like this more. It's a little bit, I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, I really probably shouldn't talk about this. It's a little too personal, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put it out there because we're Wedin. We're witching every day. And this is part of shadow work for some of us to talk about where we were and where we came from, and certainly is that way for me. So, and I've always said that your past is your truth, and the truth can't hurt you. So if you've ever questioned your right or ability to talk about the things you've been through in your life or what led you to your path, for fear that someone may judge you, or for fear that someone may, just draw assumptions based on what you've said, I just want to let you know that the truth, that old adage, the truth will set you free. There is a lot of freedom in just telling your truth. There's a lot of freedom in just living out loud and being unapologetic about who you are and where you've been and where you come from. So I hope you're feeling that. I want you to keep making magic. I want you to go outside today and feel the sun on your face if that's what feels good for you, or I don't know, take a hot bath. Do something for self-care today. And I'm going to do some self-care too. I appreciate you all watching. Thank you for coming along with me during Wedin. We've got, I think, another couple of weeks of this and more fun videos. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Until next time, huge blessings to all of you. Bye-bye.